Hey guys, welcome back to another sports stuff video. Today, we're going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their offseason plan I have laid out for them. So if you guys do enjoy, please give it a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when I post next. Let's get into this video. Boom and pow. Pittsburgh Steelers offseason plan. So, first off, we'll be starting with our cuts and or trades. We're currently negative $16 million in the cap, so we got to get positive before we do any re-signings or free agency. So the first cut we'll be doing is Allen Robinson on offense. He saved $10 million cutting him. I think this is the most obvious cut that's going to happen. He had 34 receptions, 280 yards, no touchdowns. He's not worth keeping on the roster. You saved $10 million cutting him. It makes too much sense. Next is going to be Chuck Okorafor. He had a 60 PFF grade, 8 penalties, and 2 sacks allowed. Not only did he lose his starting job, but he's now an overpaid backup. You know, if he wasn't being paid so much money to where you could save $8.5 million or $9 million, I don't think they'd cut him. But the fact that he lost his starting job, he hasn't improved since being drafted. It's just not worth it. You saved $9 million cutting him. Mitch Trubisky's the next guy. He had 632 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. They started Rudolph over him as quarterback 2 in the playoffs. So in my opinion, Mason Rudolph earned that quarterback 2 spot in this season. I don't see them bringing back Mitch Trubisky, especially when you can save $5 million cutting him. Then the next cut is going to be Mason Cole. He had a 57 PFF grade, 4 penalties, 2 sacks allowed. He was their center. He had a down season. You can get younger at the position. This draft is really deep at center. I think you could save. I think you can find someone who has better production. For the next 4 years for dirt cheap. You save $5 million cutting him. Again, I think it makes too much sense. And Nate Herbig, he's 26 years old. You can save $4 million cutting him. He had 156 snaps for you, 67 PFF grade, 1 sack. He's not a starter, but he's paid like a low-end starter in the NFL as a backup. He saved $4 million cutting him. In this cut alone, you get rid of 3 offensive linemen, but it's 3 offensive linemen that aren't impacting your team in a positive way at all. They're just hindering your cap space. Allen Robinson, I think they trade for him just to cut him and save that cap space. And Mitch Trubisky, you found someone in Mason Rudolph who's even cheaper. Then on defense, the first cut we'll be doing is Larry Ogunjobi. He had 28 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and 22 stops this past season. He had solid production overall, but you've been drafting the D-line very well. Keanu Benton last season. And just overall, you always add 1 or 2 guys in every draft class, it feels like the Pittsburgh Steelers do. And I do in this class as well. So I'd feel very comfortable cutting Larry Ogunjobi and replacing his production. He saved $10 million cutting him. Then Pat Pete, he had 37 tackles, 2 interceptions, 12 stops. He's 34 years old. You need to get younger. You need to get cheaper at that position. He wasn't good enough at corner, so they actually moved him out to safety because of how poor his corner play was at this age. He saved $7 million cutting him. Makes too much sense again. Then Elandon Roberts, he saved $3.5 million. He had 77 tackles, 48 stops, and 3 sacks. I do see them keeping him. I mean, the fact you can get almost 100 tackles out of him, nearly 50 run stops, he had 3 sacks. He's only saving $3.5 million. You could keep him. He's outperforming his current contract. But in my opinion, I'd rather get younger at the position and get another guy who can get the exact same value in the draft or in another free agency who's cheaper. Then the restructures we're doing. As you guys know, when I do my restructures, it's always, are you going to be on this team 2 years from now? Obviously, Minka, TJ, and Alex are going to be on the team 2 years from now. You open up $26 million, restructuring their 3 contracts, $10 million, $9 million, and $7 million. Then with re-signings, you now have $62 million in cap space for free agency and re-signings. And the only re-signing I'm going to have him do is Mason Rudolph. He had 719 yards, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions this season. He proved to be the quarterback 2 late season. Once Kenny Pickett got hurt and Mitchell Trubisky just wasn't playing good, you start Mason Rudolph. He plays pretty solid for you. He didn't play the worst in the playoffs. I think he's definitely worthy of a cheap contract. Mike Tomlin also loves him. So he's actually only making the vet minimum. He's making the vet minimum currently. So I decided to give him a pay raise of over $1 million. Basically, he was making 1.25. He'll be making 2.5 next season. And say, hey, you're quarterback 2, but again, you can back up Kenny Pickett. If Kenny Pickett plays bad, you start for us again, and then whatever happens there happens then. If you perform again next year at this level, we'll then give you a multi-year contract after that. But as of right now, you're going to be quarterback 2 going into training camp. Whether we trade someone, cut someone, doesn't matter. I do think there's a shot that the Steelers do trade for someone, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Geno Smith. I do think they trade for a quarterback. I just don't know who it is, so I didn't include it in this video. and I decided not to do that. And then we go in the free agency with $61.2 million. And the first sign I'm going to be doing is Aaron Brewer from the Tennessee Titans. He had a 72 PFF grade, 53 pass blocking, 78 run blocking, 5 penalties, and 6 sacks. He was originally drafted as a guard, eventually moved his way into center this past season as his first season at center. He proved to be an okay starter. I wouldn't say he had a great season. Obviously, 5 penalties, 6 sacks. But that Titans offensive line overall regressed. I think that was part of the reason why Mike Vrabel was fired, is that this offensive line and the offensive weapons have not, developed well in the past couple of seasons. But Aaron Brewer at guard was good. They moved him in the center, played fine. I think you can have him as part of that offensive line. They continue to develop the development of the offensive line, whether he plays center, whether he plays left guard next to James Daniels at right guard, whatever you want to do. I think Aaron Brewer can be that versatile interior offensive lineman starter. So I decided to give him a 3-year, $23.5 million deal, $12 million guaranteed at 51% guaranteed. Because of how bad his season technically was on paper, I think if you watch the snaps, he played pretty well at center. Then I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley as the next signing. I think I need to add another weapon to this offense. You have George Pickens. You have Deontay Johnson. You trade for Allen Robinson. Didn't work out. I think if you bring in Calvin Ridley, he can be that solid wide receiver 3. He had 76 receptions, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. I could see Jacksonville letting him walk. Jacksonville actually, I believe it was a second-round pick. And if they re-sign Calvin Ridley to another contract, it conveys into a first. So Jacksonville has the incentive to let him walk, and they don't have to give up a first-round pick. So I think it makes sense for not only the Jaguars, but Calvin Ridley can then go and get a little bit more of a payday. I don't see Jacksonville paying him. He had the quietest 1,000 yards in the league. If I told you Calvin Ridley had 1,000 yards, I think a lot of people would be like, really? Like, really? He had 1,000 yards? Yeah. Like, it was very quiet. He's not going to get a top money, top contract, but I think a solid 2-year deal where a lot of it is guaranteed. I think that can make a lot of sense for him. He plays a different role than George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. You have Deontay Johnson as a wide receiver 1, low-end wide receiver 1. George Pickens has he might go for 80, 90 yards or might go for 40 yards. Like, it's never consistent. Calvin Ridley, consistent 67 yards a game. You know he's got ways to come in with. He might get a touchdown, but he'll at least be another threat that you can have a quarterback throw to. So I decided to give him a 2-year, $32 million deal, $22.5 million guaranteed. That is 70% guaranteed. And after the first season, if it's not working out, you cut him, and I feel like you don't really lose that much in the contract. A big splash I'm going to be doing, though, is Jordan Brooks from the Seattle Seahawks. He had 74 tackles, an interception, a forced fumble, 24 stops, and 5 sacks this past season. He developed a pretty good linebacker. I remember when everyone was clowning him in the first round, including me. I saw him as a day 2 prospect, and the Seahawks drafted him in the first round. Took a couple seasons for him to develop, but last year he really came onto the scene. This year followed it up with another good season. I do see him being a linebacker 1 in Pittsburgh. I think it was Seattle, whether it was Bobby Wagner being the teacher or just a really good defense in general, Jordan Brooks developed into a really good player. He plays all over the field. I do believe that Bobby Wagner did have a big impact on him, and I think that could definitely bring over to this linebacker room that just struggles to stay healthy and be good. So I decided to give Jordan Brooks a 3-year, $46.5 million deal, $25 million guaranteed. That is 54% guaranteed. It makes a lot of sense. He becomes your linebacker number 1. He can become the anchor of that front 7 when it comes to to pass pro. He can still blitz really well, and we know that the Steelers love the blitz under Mike Tomlin. I think Jordan Brooks is a great fit for that. Lastly, I'm going to be signing Keyshawn Nixon from the Green Bay Packers. He had 59 tackles, an interception, 31 stops, and a sack. He was a solid undrafted free agent rookie quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. He definitely plays more that slot cornerback. I don't know why I'm saying quarter. Slot cornerback role. You have Jair on the outside. I think Keyshawn Nixon can slot right in at the slot corner. And if you want to draft someone or keep developing the guys you have in-house, the Valentine twins, who aren't actually twins, but they have the same last name. I think that's the Packers. About the Steelers. You have Joey Porter Jr. I think you draft another corner to go outside of Joey Porter Jr. in the draft. You sign Keyshawn Nixon to be your potential day 1 starter at slot corner. I think it goes really well. They're very deep in this class, the outside corner prospects. I think you can draft a starting outside corner in the 2nd, 3rd round. I wouldn't be shocked if the 1st round they go corner. He's a good tackler, needs to work on pass breakups, needs to work on tracking the ball better. But when the ball is in the receiver's hands, he tackles really well. Decided to give him a cheap contract, 3 years for $12.5 million deals. Wow, 3-year, $12.5 million, $6.5 million guaranteed. That's 52% guaranteed for an undrafted free agent that wasn't, obviously wasn't drafted in the NFL draft. I think that's pretty good. You still have $25.5 million deal. Wow, I don't know why I keep saying deals. You still have $25.5 million. If you want to go out and sign someone else, if you want to get a quality like free agent, if you want to get more depth guys and fill out your roster a little more, which is what I would do, you still have a whole bunch of money. But I don't want to, again, I only like to do 3 or 4 guys that I think could start day one. I don't really like getting depth guys unless it's like a rotational pass rusher. I don't really care about backups because backups are so replaceable. If I usually cover 3 or 4 impactful starter options for whatever team I cover. And the Steelers, they're pretty well rounded when it comes to starters. Their depth is the main issue. So I decided to go with, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 3, Jordan Brooks, linebacker 1, Aaron Brewer, are starting the offensive line, Keyshawn Nixon starting slot corner. So none of the big positions are open. That's the thing. But yeah, and this is a mock draft. As you can see, I went with corner in the first round. I grabbed Kamari Lassiter. He's one of the most dominant corners in this draft when it comes to outside corners. He allowed no touchdowns this year, only 38.5% completion percentage allowed as well. He's just dominant at Georgia. He's been there a couple of seasons. He's developed. I think that the Steelers, if they can get Kamari Lassiter, you have Joey Porter Jr. Those are 2 of the best young corners in the last couple of drafts that you can have paired. They're both lockdown outside corners. You put them on both sides of the field, and you feel comfortable of them funneling everything inside of this defense. Then at number 52, I grabbed Dominic Pooney from Kansas. He has experience at left guard and left tackle. He's never allowed a sack in his career, and he has a build of a guard. So if you want to move him into left guard, you can. If you want to keep him at left tackle, you can. I think you just need to get someone who could start. This Steelers team, they keep drafting, keep signing offensive linemen. It's gotten to the point where I say you draft the offensive linemen, and the 5 best players you have, you put them where they go. Like if you have 3 guards who are part of the top 5 starters, one of them are playing center. Like there's an issue that this keeps happening with the Steelers. They need to get the 5 best guys and just put them out there instead of who's the best left tackle, who's the best right tackle, who's the best left guard. No, who's the best guard, who's the best tackle. And if a center is not good enough, we either go sign a center or we have one of our guards play center like Aaron Brewer. Just get the best 5 guys out there. I think that could be really helpful for the Steelers. Then at 84, Peyton Wilson. I love Peyton Wilson in this class from North Carolina State. He is one of my depth linebackers that I think could be gems. He's a dominant linebacker, 26 coverage stops, which was first in college football. He had 14 run stops, which was top 15 in college football. So he's just a guy who stopped the run, stopped the pass, did not let anything go past him. I think he would start day one. He had nearly 100 tackles in college. I just see Peyton Wilson day one as a starter. Imagine him and Jordan Brooks next to each other. I think that'd be an athletic linebacker group that would be terrifying to go against. Then at 119, I grabbed Jaden Hicks from Washington State. He's a good run defending safety with good coverage skills. I don't see him as a starter. I see him more as a rotational guy. But maybe he could be a stopgap starter later in the season because you do have Pat Pete starting at safety. So maybe it's Minka and Jaden Hicks. But I think day one he's not a starter. But maybe later down the season, maybe it's possible. He had 64 tackles, 24 run stops, which was top 13 in college football. And he had position snaps at box and free safety. So again, he's versatile at 119, maybe later in the season starter. I just don't think he's ready to start day one, but maybe he can prove me wrong. Then at 120, I'm gonna grab Taj Washington out of USC. He's one of my favorite wide receivers out of USC. I think that with that group of wide receivers that Caleb Williams had, I think Taj Washington was one of the more impressive ones. He shined at the Shrine Bowl this past couple of weeks. He's a slot screen deep guy. I don't see him as a possession wide receiver who has 10 catches for 99 yards. He's not a Cooper Kupp, right? He doesn't get his yardage by getting 18 targets a game. I think he'll get his 5-6 targets a game and make the most out of it. He'll be a yak type of guy. He'll be a guy that you throw the deep ball to, he catches it, hits the ground, or if you throw a screen to him, he'll get the extra yardage. I just don't know if he is a true impact number one receiver. But I think for the Steelers, you need more versatility at wide receiver. You got George Pickens, you got Deontay Johnson, you got Calvin Ridley in my mock. You got your outside receivers. Get a guy who can get the ball in his hands, get extra yardage, and can dominate the middle of the field. I think Taj Washington could be that kind of guy for them. He had 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns this past season at 18 yards per reception, right? That's amazing. Then at 198, I grabbed Dylan McMahon out of North Carolina State. He played at every interior offensive line spot. Like I said, with the Steelers, you're at the point where you just have to draft 5. We have to have 5 guys in the field, and you figure out what the position they play. I think Dylan McMahon is a guy who could be a backup at all 3 interior offensive line positions and could potentially start at one of the interior offensive line positions if injury does happen. Plus, when you have a guy who has versatility at like both guard spots or both guards and center, that opens up a roster spot somewhere else in the roster, because now you don't have to carry 2 guards and a center backup, right? You can carry 1 guard, 1 center, or even 1 guy for all 3, and then you can have another safety on roster, another linebacker on roster. And I think that's what, these late round draft picks offer you day one, is a versatility and the roster spots. Again, I don't think he's a starter day one. I think he's more of a depth guy, which is okay. You're in the 6th round, you get a guy for 4 years on a cheap contract who can be a depth guy. That's awesome. Then in 241, I do grab another safety in Ketan Oladapo from Oregon State. He's another great safety prospect. Don't think he's ever going to start. He's more of a special teams rotation guy. He had 63 tackles, a 19.4 force incompletion rate, which is towards the top of college football. I think it's like the top 10% when it comes like I guess maybe 93rd percentile or something. I'm trying to remember what it wasn't PFF. What Pro Football Reference. I'm trying to remember what they rated it at. I believe it was a 93% from Ketan Oladapo. He's 6'1", 217. A frame that I like in a lot of my safeties is 6'1", is 6'3", 200 pounds at 225, and athletic 225. That's what I like to see. Ketan Oladapo has that. He also played a lot of slot corner as well. So let's say you draft Ketan Oladapo. They could be a backup safety and slot corner who can start for you. And if a guy gets injured, and you feel okay that he's a good frame, has good tackling ability, knows how to get the ball out of the hands of receivers. I would trust him if needed to start due to injury. Maybe not year one, but I think he can develop into that kind of guy. Again, I'd say Dylan McMahon and Ketan Oladipo are the only guys I don't think could play year one, or I don't expect to play significant snaps year one. Taj Washington, I think, does play a good amount of snaps year one. Jaden Hicks, I do think later in the season could become the starter. Payne Wilson, I think, is a starter day one. Dominic Pooney, I think, will be one of the top 5 offensive linemen, so would start somewhere. And Kamari Lassiter would be a potential all-rookie team type of guy with the Steelers. But if you guys enjoy, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Again, I decided not to trade for a quarterback. I decided to stick with Kenny Pickett, stick with Mason Rudolph, and maybe they can sign. Again, I gave them $25 million to remain in cap space, right? They could trade for a quarterback, trade for Geno and take his cap hit, trade for Justin and have him as a 1-year prove-it deal. Like, there's a lot that they could do. I decided not to do it in mine, though, because I wanted all my draft picks, because I knew this team needed young depth, right? They needed young depth and young guys who can impact day one. So I wanted to keep all my draft picks, and I wanted to not sign someone in free agency, because I don't think they're going to be a team that signs someone. It's going to be a trade for Geno or a trade for Justin Fields. But if you guys enjoy, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I post next. And I'll see you guys later. Peace and bye.